Okay, so I think we might as well get started here. We're a couple minutes after 9, and so I wanted to welcome everyone to our very first ever From the Field Farm Chat with Idaho Wheat. This is our new web series to address some grower education topics, and we're hoping that as we go along, we will get some ideas and feedback from our participants and growers on what future topics they would like to see. And our promise with these is that they will be short enough to keep your attention, but long enough to give you all of the facts. We appreciate those of you who are participating live, and we'll welcome any questions that you have, but also want to thank anybody who might be watching our recording later. That's kind of our idea, is to meet everybody where they are, and when they need these on demand, they'll be able to find them. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our very first guest speaker for this presentation, Dr. Albert Adjesiwor. I think I pretty close on the pronunciation. He can correct me, but he is the new weed scientist from the University of Idaho, and so we actually got some feedback from growers about the problem with China lettuce, and so he is going to help us with that. And I also wanted to thank Brittany Hurst Merchant for organizing all of this for us. So Albert, if you want to take over.
Thank you, Casey, for the introduction. I'm really excited to be here. So I joined the University of Idaho last year, and I've been really excited about the job and happy working with small grain growers in the wheat commission. So I'm really happy and that I'm the first to speak for this series. And so with that, I'll say thank you. And thank you, Brittany, for organizing this and with all the email correspondence. So share my, okay. Can I get permission to share my screen if possible? All right. Okay. Can you see my screen? Yes, all right. Okay, so thanks again. My name is Albert Adjesiwor, and at the Direct Seed Conference this year, one of the things that growers were talking about is how to control China letters. And so when Brittany asked me if I would be willing to present on anything, I was like, okay, how about this topic? So at the end of this presentation, I would ask you to give me any input or any suggestions for future topics that you want to hear about. So if you are here today, chances are that, or if you are listening to this presentation, chances are that you know what China letters is. But for the purpose of those who don't know what this wheat is, I'll spend the next few minutes to just show you what this wheat is and why it's such a problem in small grain production systems. And so China letters has a lot of names. And so you might be here, be like, okay, what is China letters? It's called different names: compass plant, horse thistle. And so it is known at different places by different names. And so the easiest way to search for it is probably just use a scientific name, and then you will be able to find any information on this species. It is a winter annual or biannual, what means is that it comes up in the fall, then overwinter as a rosette, and then they tend to expand in the spring before they start setting seed in the second year. They can produce quite a bit of seed, up to like 46,000 seeds per plant, and so that's a lot. And those seeds don't really last too long in the soil, but 3 years is still a long time for that weed to cause a lot of problems. And so one of the best management practices for this is try to make sure that they don't go to seed. And those seeds, they have some white plumes on them that help them fly. And so that's how they spread across the field. And so if you wait till they get seed before you control this, you would see this spread all over your field because those seeds can just fly behind your combine. And so this is the rosettes. The first photo there is the rosettes. So this is how they will look typically in the fall and early in the spring. And then they start to extend their stems in the late in the spring, and then they will set seed. One of the key identifying features of this is that you see that line of spines at the back of the leaf, and so that's how you identify these species. So some fact about this, the scientific name of this species is Lactuca cereola, and Lactuca is just mean that white milky thing. So if you break that leaf or the stem, you just see that white milky thing coming out of the stem. So that's why it's called that Lactuca. And a lot of places they call this species like a compass plant because those lower leaves they will turn around to face the sun. And so that's why they call them compass plant, because they work like a compass. And there is a company, I think in Washington, at some point trying to make rubber out of this. And so like people are different uses for it. And there is another fun fact about this that it can be used for like sunburn treatment. I don't know how true that is, but yeah, those are some fun facts. All right, so because we are talking about herbicide control of these species, one of the things I want to talk about is resistance in these species that we've known already. And this weed has been shown to be resistant to two groups of herbicide in the US, in the United States so far. Group 2 herbicide, which we use a lot in our small grains, and then group 4 herbicides as well. For the group 2 herbicide, the first case of herbicide resistance was actually from Idaho, was 1987. And then subsequently, those were recorded in Oregon and Washington. And so later, we also found resistance to group 4 herbicide, Dicamba 2,4-DMCPA. And we don't have any glyphosate resistance in this species, not yet reported in the US, but we have that report in Australia. And so that's something to look out for. So now let's go to how to control China letters. And so I came here from University of Wyoming, and when I was there, every year we had a follow study where we look at control options for kochia and China letters. And so that's one of the things that interests me about this, because that's something that over the years we've seen very good control of China letters. And so I was surprised to see that it's such a problem here and people are struggling to control. So in follow, we've seen really huge success in control. So these are data that I'll be presenting mostly from Wyoming for the control in follow. And I give credit to my previous boss, Dr. Andrew Kenneth. So back in 2009, that's when my boss started in Wyoming. And one of the things they look at the first year is just looking at how to control China letters in fallow. That time in the spring, like Weather Max, Roundup Weather Max, and Power Max at 22 ounces provided very good control of China letters. And probably you'll be asking, if Roundup provides such a good control, then why are we here today? Turns out that over the years, these species have become more tolerant to Roundup, and so I'll present in my subsequent slide that we don't have such a good control for China letters from Roundup alone. You have to mix it with something else. And so the way I'll present these tables, the green, if you see anything in green, that means that that's good to excellent control. And then if you see something in yellow, it means that that's kind of fair to good control. And anything you see in white means that that's not good control, like it's poor control for China letters. So Roundup 2,4-D, Roundup and Sharpen, which is sulfophenazole, it's a group 14 herbicide. Roundup and Distinct has dicamba and then diflufenzopyr. They all provide a very good control of Roundup. And I would give more detail about the label and what the active ingredient and the label rates for these chemicals are later in the presentation. So we can see that back in those years, we just found very good control of China letters from almost all the herbicide treatment that we looked at. Fast forward to 2018, because I don't want to bore you with years and years of data, we also look at different chemistries to see what else is out there that we can use to control China letters in the fallow before we rotate to small grains. And one of the chemicals we look at is thiophenosol, which is recently labeled as Revington. And that is labeled, the label rate is 1 to 3 ounces. So it's just a low label rate. And you can see that it mixes really well with Roundup. And you see, when you mix the Roundup, you see very good control. And I didn't include the Roundup only treatment here just because the slide was getting crowded. But we're getting like just 50% control from the Roundup alone. And so it's mostly that thiophenosol that is doing most of the work here. Gramoxone also gave us some control, but you have to use a maximum rate, which is like 4 pints per acre before you get in a good control from Gramoxone. And once you go to thiophenosol, just 2 ounces without even a Roundup, you get very excellent control. And so, and I would like to mention that this herbicide is labeled as a burn down herbicide for small grains. And so you can spray that very day you plant wheat and you won't have any residue or injury issues from this herbicide. And once you reduce the Gramoxone rate below 56 ounces, you don't get any good control. And so that shows that here is mostly a thiophenosol or a premix with Roundup that will give you the control that you need. 2019, we look at different chemistries again, but mostly now focus on Liberty. Liberty is a group 10 herbicide. Glufosinate is the active ingredient. And the maximum rate label is 36 ounces per acre. You can see that even at that, just one-time application of that provided excellent control of China letters. And then if you use low rates, and I would explain this later in the presentation, but some of the issues with Liberty is that it don't work well when it's too hot or it's, the humidity is too low. And you can see like in Idaho, those are things that we see almost all the time in the summer. It's too hot and low humidity. And so one of the things that you can do when you have a situation you don't get good control from one pass is to split your rate and go 2 passes, and you get excellent control of China letters. And as I mentioned in the previous slide, over the years, Roundup alone doesn't provide good control of China letters. And so that's why we started looking into some of those chemistries. And so for Liberty, from 36 ounces up to a 2 pass or 22 ounces will give you a very good control of China letters. Some other chemicals we looked at over the years are cyanate, which I would explain what the active ingredients are in the next couple of slides. And cyanate is 21 ounces per acre, provided like almost complete. It just smoked them. And I would also, in the next slide, we just tell you like what is the rotation restriction for this. So if you spray this in your fallow, can you rotate your small grains or your wheat in what time? And then status, which is also the same active ingredient in the extent, also provide very good control in premix to Roundup. And again, Liberty and Impact. AIM alone, which is a group 14 herbicide, carfentrazone, doesn't provide good control of these species. And so mostly it's Impact, cyanate, or Liberty again. And so there are several options you can use to control this in the fallow. And so this is just a summary of those chemicals that provided like good control of China letters that we've seen. And so Impact, any rate from 0.75 ounces will give you an excellent control. And if you spray that, you have up to 3 months before you can plant small grains. And so it's not that long, and it's just, these are just conservative estimates as to like how long you can wait, but I'm sure that you can go earlier, especially if you have irrigation going on. And Liberty, just 70 days or like just less than 2 months or less, you can plant your small grains. And Revington, which is a group 14 herbicide as well, is labeled for small grains, and you can spray that same day and plant your small grains. And Status is just 1 month to 4 months, you can plant your small grains. And then Sharpen is also labeled pre-plant for small grains, and so you can spray that same day and plant. Cyanate, also up to 3 months. But one thing to also look at here is the other column. And depending on what crops you have in the rotation, you might also have to look into like what other options you might have that don't have that much residue. So I mentioned gramoxone will also give you some control, but not that good of a control. So you have to go to the almost the highest label rate, which is all 64 ounces or 4 pints per acre. So now to those chemicals that I just listed in this table, Revington, so I mentioned it's a group 14 herbicide. The active ingredient is thiafenazole, and it's been labeled last year for use in small grains. And so the rate is 1 to 3 ounces per acre, and you have to use MSO. It's a methylated seed oil with this to get a good control. Liberty or Rely is just the same active ingredient, the same concentration. It's labeled for use as a burn down herbicide. So you can spray up to like 2 months, excuse me, before you plant your small grains. And as I mentioned, one of the issues with Liberty is that they don't work well when you have low humidity or high temperature. But there's a research that's been done in Colorado that published last 2 years that shows that if you mix Liberty with Sharpen, then you don't have to worry that much about low humidity and temperature. And so those two herbicides don't have like long-term residue. And so those are the options you can use if you are getting poor control from Liberty. If you mix with Sharpen, you should be able to get good control from this herbicide. Impact is mostly labeled for corn. It's very low use rate, and it's also a group 27 herbicide, topramazone, and it's 0.75 to 1 ounces per acre, and just 3 months rotation restriction to small grains. And so one thing I would like to mention here is that if we continue using the same chemicals we use every year, we most likely see resistance, and sometimes it's good to, that's one of the reason why we look into some of those herbicides that we don't commonly use in small grains, and so that we can rotate those sites of actions or mode of action to reduce any chances of rotation and development. And then cyanate, it's topramazone, which is like the Impact plus Liberty glufosinate, and so like it's just like that 1 to 3 months rotation restriction. And it's also quite not too high of a use rate, 21 to 28 ounces per acre. Status, which is the same thing as distinct, is diflufenozapyr, which is group 19. So group 19 herbicide is also a growth regulator, right? Just one of the growth regulator herbicide that will provide good control of grasses. And so diflufenozapyr, the 5 to 10 ounces per acre will give you a good control of China lettuce. And it's the same thing as the same active ingredient and distinct. And this is labeled for pasture too, so it's safe for grazing. And then Sharpen, low use rate 1 to 2 ounces per acre. It's a group 14 herbicide, and that's labeled for small grains. And so if you spray, you don't have to worry about residue. Especially to your small grains, you can plant the same day. All right, so that brings me to the end, to bring us to the end of controlling fallow. I know that some of you or most of us will be interested to know, how do you actually control China lettuce in wheat? Or if it comes up, if we are not able to get it out before the spring. And so over the years, research has been done to look at different small grain herbicide for China lettuce control in wheat. And this table is set up the same way. And so this green is just those herbicides that will provide very good control of China lettuce in wheat. And the yellow is just a suppression or just a fair to good. And then anything white is not that good or anything to focus on. And I would like to also mention that we had group 2 resistance in Idaho and also group 4, and so that's something to pay attention to. So this low control you're seeing here is probably due to tolerance or resistance to those group of herbicides, because this year mostly group 2 and group 4 herbicides. And so this research was done in Washington State University. So Husky, just 13.5 ounces per acre will give excellent control channel lettuce. And in the discussion, if you've seen poor control from Husky, please let me know, and maybe you can send a sample to see if there's resistance or something to Husky, because it should provide good control for channel lettuce. Orion, which is Promesolam plus MCP ester, also provide very good control of channel lettuce, and wide match will also provide good control of channel lettuce. Metribuzin and Styrene Ultra will also provide a fair to good control of channel lettuce. And out in the next slide, I will show you some of the new premixes of these chemicals that will probably provide a very good control of channel lettuce in your wheat or small grains. So Husky is bromoxynol prososulfatol, which is like a group 5 or group 6 plus a group 27 herbicide. And Bayer now has a Husky FX where they added like Feroxopyr, which is the active ingredient Styrene Ultra. And as you can see from the previous slide, excuse me to go back, we saw that the Styrene Ultra alone provide like 80% control of channel lettuce. And so if you premix Husky with Feroxopyr, that will give you excellent control of channel lettuce. I don't know if these are available yet for you to purchase, but it's part of some of the trial that we'll be doing this year in our small grains. Then Wolverine is just Husky, what the active ingredient Husky plus Axial, which is not Axial, Peroxoprop with Tacoma, but this is also an active ingredient in Axial Bold. And so if you have this, and that means that you get good broadleaf control, but also some grass and weeds will be taken care of. Then, as I mentioned, Orion will also give you a good control in wide match, which is coprolic, but Feroxopyr, the active ingredient, Styrene Ultra. And also there is a wider match where they added a haloxyfen now to that, so that would also provide very good control of channel lettuce in the wheat. And so with that, I would end the presentation by saying that there are general best management practices that you can use for channel lettuce control. That it's a biennial or winter annual, that means that it comes up in the fall. One of the things you can do is to burn down that before you start planting your small grains. That way they don't overwinter to give you problems in spring. They're mostly susceptible when they are less than 3 inches, and so like that's the time to target them. Always try to start weed free. If you have a thick stand of channel lettuce, don't think they're going to die over the winter. Try to burn them down before you plant. And also prevent seed production, because as I mentioned, up to 46,000 seeds can produce just per plant, and those can fly behind your combine. So it's also good to prevent seed production in this species. And remember that weeds will adapt to any practice you do repeatedly. So if you apply the same herbicide every single year, you probably see resistance. So trying to diversify your weed control practices. That's why some of the herbicide we look at in the fallow are things that we don't commonly use in small grains. So I started by saying that we focus on this because during the direct seed conference, this is what most folks were talking about, how to control channel lettuce. I want to hear what your interests are. What are some of the things that you want us to focus on? Because the purpose of me being in this position is to make sure that we answer questions that are relevant to you, the growers. And so please feel free to let me know what are some of the things that you can press, you can chat, type in the chat box, some of the things you want to focus on. So the question that I've gotten recently is, can I mix this burn down herbicide with my starter fertilizer or my UAN fertilizer? And so I'll be having some trial in the next couple of weeks just to look at some of those options. So that's something you wanna hear in the future. You can type it in the chat box so that I'll focus, and also let me know what herbicide you want me to focus on. And Italian ryegrass has gotten a lot of press because of its bad reputation. And so that's something that I want to hear about in the future too. Can type in the chat box. If there are other things that you want this position to focus on in terms of weed control, anything that you want me to focus on, feel free to put in the chat box or let me know. So with that, thank you so much for your attention, and then thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk or chat with you today. With that, I would take any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Albert. There was one question in the chat box, and I would ask if anybody else wants to add their question into the chat box, or I believe you should also be able to turn on your microphone. But the question that was there now is, how widespread is China lettuce?
Thank you. That's a good question. It's very widespread. I drove last fall and I started this position just looking at collecting wheat seed, and I see it on almost every field that I went to. So it's very widespread, mostly in no-till systems.
And how far wide is it in the country, or is it the region? What's the geographic area?
That's a good question. It's mostly in the Western US. And so like we deal with it when I was in Wyoming, we see it in every fallow trial that we do. And the Pacific Northwest, like it's adapted well to small grain producing areas and also in no-till fallows, wheat production systems. And so, mostly in the Western US.
Okay, if there's anybody else that has a question, I think you should be able to turn on your microphone and jump in and ask Albert your question while we have him here. Okay, I'm not seeing any. Hopefully that means there weren't questions and there weren't issues with the microphone, but it seems like we are right on schedule. Here's one more question about cheatgrass in intercropped wheat and legumes.
Okay, so what's the question? Is it how to control that grass, or?
I think that was in the probably how to control it. He has not added anything in there. Yes, how we can control cheatgrass.
Okay, well, thank you. So cheatgrass, any grass herbicide should take cheatgrass out unless it's resistant. And so if you don't have any grass crop and just legume and any grass herbicide like Select Max, I spray some Select this spring and I got excellent control cheatgrass. So Select Max should control cheatgrass. If it's not resistant to Roundup should provide a good control as well. And so any grass herbicide, Phenoxaprop, which is like Tacoma, if you have the Select Max or you have Clethodim, that will provide good control of cheatgrass.
Okay, so I do not see any other questions in the chat box, but Albert, I know, would be happy to answer any other questions via email or phone later if you have those. Can it be used in intercropped? That was the follow-up question, Albert.
So intercrop, is it legume or wheat legume intercrop? If you have cheatgrass, and probably your best option is to use axial bolt. That would give you like the Phenoxaprop and also Pinoxadan for grass control. Yes, so that axial bolt and axial are labeled for wheat, and those should not affect your legume because they only control grasses. So that would be your best option.
I think cheatgrass might be a great topic for a future seminar. I know when we were traveling around the state last week, we heard it mentioned several times. So maybe a really good topic to dive into a little bit more thoroughly here in the future. But those are great questions. All right, so we are running up on our half an hour, and as we promised, we're going to keep these short. So I want to thank Albert again. This was great. Thank you for all of the participants. And please let us know whether in the chat box you can email Brittany directly, or you can email wheat@idahowheat.org with any topics that you would like to see on any theme really for grower education, whether it be weeds or something in production practices, or whether it be marketing or other topics. We would love to hear what is most interesting and productive for you. So with that, I think we will wrap up our first session. Albert, thank you very much, and thank you to everyone.
Thank you very much. And yeah, if you have any question, let me know. And if you have any resistance, I'm always looking for seed, and so just build me some seed, and I will screen that and give you the results back in a few weeks. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.